The most useful thinking tools you'll ever find weren't written by anyone trying to help you. They were written by people who looked at human behavior honestly, without softening what they saw, and what they produced is darker and more precise than anything the self-help industry has touched. Most of what gets sold as mental performance advice is additive. Stack another habit, build another system, optimize another morning. But the philosophers who actually mapped how the brain defends itself, deceives itself, and holds itself back weren't writing productivity content. They were writing something closer to a field guide to the uncomfortable machinery underneath. And the reason almost nobody applies these frameworks is that they require looking at yourself without the flattering filter most modern advice keeps firmly in place. There are 10 of these tools. Some will feel immediately useful. A few will feel like a diagnosis you didn't ask for. And one of them, the last one, is the kind of idea that changes how you interpret your own behavior every day after you understand it. I almost left it out for that reason. We'll get there. Most self-improvement content is selling you addition, new habits, new routines, new morning rituals layered on top of the same old brain. And look, none of that is wrong. But here's what almost nobody tells you. The most powerful mental frameworks ever written weren't written by coaches or productivity gurus. They were written by philosophers who were genuinely a little dark, and the tools they left behind are sharper than anything in the self-help aisle. This video is about 10 of those tools. Real philosophy, most of it obscure, almost none of it mainstream, reframed specifically for how your brain actually works. Some of these will feel uncomfortable. That's the point. And the last one on this list is the one I almost didn't include, because once you understand it, you can't unsee it in your own behavior. We'll get there. Let's start with a Norwegian philosopher almost nobody outside academic circles has ever heard of. His name was Peter Wessel Zapffe, and in 1933 he wrote an essay called The Last Messiah that basically argued human beings are too conscious for their own good. He believed that existential angst was the result of humans' overly evolved intellect, and his solution wasn't therapy or meditation. In Zapffe's view, man's survival is possible by a more or less conscious suppression of this surplus of consciousness. He mapped out 4 specific ways we do this. The 4 suppression mechanisms are isolation, anchoring, diversion, and sublimation. Isolation is basically pushing uncomfortable thoughts out of your mind before they fully form. Anchoring refers to creating or clinging to a framework of meaning that gives us stability. This might include religious beliefs, cultural norms, or personal goals that provide a sense of purpose. Distraction is when you limit attention by constantly enthralling it with impressions. It focuses all of your energy on a task or idea to prevent the mind from turning in on itself. And then there's sublimation, the rarest of the 4. When the first 3 fail and the tragic cannot be ignored, sublimation offers a way of turning the unignorable pain of living into creative, positive, valuable work. Why does this matter for you practically? Because once you can name which mechanism you're running, you get to choose whether it's serving you or just numbing you. Distraction that keeps you from spiraling is useful. Distraction that keeps you from ever sitting with a hard decision is just avoidance wearing a productive costume. Knowing the difference is the whole game. Now here's where it starts to connect to something bigger, and this is the thread I want you to hold on to as we go through the rest of these. Before Dale Carnegie ever dreamed of winning friends and influencing people, Baltasar Gracián's The Art of Worldly Wisdom, written in 1647, was already teaching people to conceal their intentions and play the long game. It's a book of 300 maxims written by a 17th century Jesuit priest, and many consider it Machiavelli's better in strategy and insight. One of his core ideas is this: never show a finished hand. A resolution declared is never highly thought of. It only leaves room for criticism. And he takes it further. Keep hope alive without entirely satisfying it, by preserving it to make oneself always needed. This sounds like manipulation at first, but here's the real application. When you fully reveal your plans, your progress, your next move, to your boss, your peers, even your social media audience, you become predictable, and a fully readable person loses leverage. Strategic incompleteness isn't about being secretive for the sake of it. It's about keeping enough concealed that people can't get ahead of you. Gracián understood that mystery is a form of power, and that applies just as much to how you carry yourself as it does to how you negotiate. So if Gracián is about what you show others, Schopenhauer is about how close you let them get. The hedgehog's dilemma is a metaphor about the challenges of human intimacy. It describes a situation in which a group of hedgehogs seek to move close to one another to share heat during cold weather, but they must remain apart, because they cannot avoid hurting one another with their sharp spines. Arthur Schopenhauer conceived this metaphor for the state of the individual in society. Despite goodwill, humans cannot be intimate without the risk of mutual harm, leading to cautious and tentative relationships. But here's the part most people miss. The parable isn't about avoiding people. It's about finding the exact distance that gives warmth without pain. There's an optimal radius to closeness, not a maximum. The brain hack here is resisting both extremes, total isolation and total enmeshment, and instead treating your relationships like a calibration problem. How close is productive? Where does it start costing more than it gives? Most people never ask that question consciously. They just drift. And drifting is exactly what the Stoics were trying to prevent, just in a completely different direction. The Stoics had a practice called premeditatio malorum, which translates roughly to the premeditation of evils. Seneca and Epictetus taught their students to actively visualize loss, failure, and ruin in advance. Not to be pessimistic, to be inoculated. The logic is simple. If your brain has already rehearsed the worst case, the actual worst case hits with far less force. It's essentially prescriptive anxiety, used as armor rather than avoided. Most productivity advice says visualize success. The Stoics said visualize the collapse of everything you're building, in detail, regularly, and then watch how much calmer you get about pursuing it. Now here's something that cuts even deeper than that, and this is where the ideas start to get genuinely uncomfortable. Rochefoucauld was a 17th century French writer whose maxims are brutal in the best way. His core thesis is that most of what we call virtue, generosity, kindness, selflessness, is self-interest in disguise. The real cognitive move he's proposing isn't cynicism, it's self-auditing. Before you label your own behavior as noble, ask, who benefits? What am I getting out of this? Because the brain is very good at constructing a flattering story about your motives after the fact, and the people who spot their own disguises before others do are the ones who stop being manipulated by their own ego. That connects directly to something Nietzsche was writing about around the same time, though he came at it from a completely different angle. Most people have heard of Nietzsche's idea of self-overcoming, but the version circulating in pop culture is basically just push through hard things and grow. That's not what he meant. The German word he used was Selbstüberwindung, and the key detail is that his model of growth requires periodically dismantling a prior version of yourself entirely, not building on top of it. The habits, the identity, the value system you built in your 20s might be the exact thing blocking the person you need to become at 35. Most self-improvement content sells addition. Nietzsche was selling demolition, and the reason that's a brain hack is because the brain resists identity loss the same way it resists physical pain. Knowing that resistance is structural, not a sign you're wrong, changes how you move through it. And by the way, if you're finding these useful, drop a comment below with which one hit hardest. It genuinely helps the channel, and I'm curious which of these lands differently for different people. There's also a video on this channel that goes deep into Stoic mental frameworks specifically, worth watching after this one. Now, Sun Tzu. Everyone knows the appear weak when you are strong line. It's always taught as a tactic against other people. The version almost nobody talks about is turning it inward, deliberately underselling your own progress to yourself. Keeping your ego from declaring victory too early is one of the most underused mental moves there is. The brain is wired to relax once it perceives success. A self-directed feint keeps that relaxation from becoming complacency. You tell yourself you're further behind than you are, not to demoralize yourself but to keep the engine running. And then there's Machiavelli, who's been misread for 500 years. The famous line everyone quotes is, "The ends justify the means." Machiavelli never actually wrote that. What he wrote in The Prince was that a ruler must learn how not to be good and use that capacity selectively, as needed. It's a toggle, not a permanent state. The brain hack here is separating your moral defaults from your strategic options. You don't have to use every tool in the box, but knowing the box exists, and that choosing not to use something is a choice, not an inability, is a completely different cognitive position than not knowing it's there. We're almost at the last one, and I told you at the start, this would be the one that's hardest to shake. Michel Foucault argued that the Panopticon had become the fundamental model of control in modern society. Power no longer punishes directly. Instead, it disciplines individuals through invisible surveillance. The individual self-regulates with the feeling of constantly being watched, and power is internalized. Here's the part Foucault is pointing at, that almost nobody applies to their own behavior. A consciousness of constant surveillance is internalized. Panopticism describes a mode of social control in which individuals begin to police themselves due to constant surveillance. But this panoptic gaze does not have to be visible to create disciplinary effects. So the application is this. You don't need an accountability partner. You don't need someone checking in on you. You need to internalize the sensation of being observed, and you can engineer that deliberately. Some people do it with a camera in their workspace. Some do it by journaling as if someone will read it. Some just sit with the question, if someone I respected could see exactly what I'm doing right now, would I keep doing it? That question, held consistently, produces real behavior change. Not because anyone is watching, because you've made yourself believe they might be. Foucault thought this was a mechanism of social control. Turned inward, it's one of the most effective self-discipline tools ever described. So here's what we actually covered. Zapffe gave you a map of the 4 ways your brain avoids itself, and the ability to choose which one you're running. Gracián gave you strategic incompleteness as a power tool. Schopenhauer gave you a calibration model for closeness. The Stoics gave you disaster rehearsal as inoculation. Rochefoucauld gave you a mirror for your own motives. Nietzsche gave you demolition as a growth strategy. Sun Tzu gave you the self-directed feint. Machiavelli gave you a toggle, not a moral verdict. And Foucault gave you the internalized observer, a watcher you install in yourself. You came into this video thinking philosophy was abstract. These frameworks are older than anything in the self-help section, and most of them are sharper. The difference is they were written by people who weren't trying to make you feel good. They were trying to describe reality accurately, and that's exactly why they work.